This is a production of kmmedia.pro. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So come on over into our world. I know you'll like it, because on today's show, we get to talk to a award-winning author. He's an Amazon #1 bestseller. He's got a great book out, and it is, well, first of all, his name is Kam Majd. And Eric, first of all, how are you, sir?
Hey, good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. I'm doing well.
It is a happy Wednesday. How's it's 4:00 in the afternoon in the city. How's traffic going and everything? Any major issues that anybody needs to know about?
Just the usual tough afternoon commute here, but I mean the good thing is that it's no longer raining, so probably less accidents this afternoon than we had this morning. But
I
yeah.
was not available. Was there a lot of trouble this morning?
Oh yeah. I mean, anytime it rains after a long time of not having rain, you're going to have a bunch of people skidding into each other. And this morning was no different. But we've got sunshine out our window right now, so I'm sure people are all right.
I want to remind everybody of that very issue, which is when it hasn't been raining for a while, oil gets on the road and it stays there until it gets washed off. And in that process, a lot of times it can get rather slippery. So do what a good bus driver does and give the person in front of you lots of distance. 2 to 3 seconds is optimal. Even 4 seconds would be better, so that you can stay away from the accidents and get to work, so that you don't have to worry about such things. And also, I also heard a horrible tragedy today, Eric, and we've talked about it on the show before, but it bears repeating. This is summertime. This is August. A lady, and I don't know how she did this, but she had her 18-month-old in the car seat in the back, and she apparently missed the daycare and went to work. Was at work 8 hours, and then she came back to find that her baby or her granddaughter had deceased. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows, remember where your children are at all times, and your dogs and everybody, so that you don't just forget that somebody's in your back seat. And
Doesn't hurt to double check that back seat.
Boy, I tell you what, those are tragedies that are totally avoidable, and I hope everybody takes it to heart, especially with your pets and stuff. If it's really hot outside and you're planning on going someplace for a little while, just leave the pet home. They're more comfortable there anyway. So anyway, that's my public service announcement for today. So, and anything else going on, Eric?
Another beautiful week here in the Pacific Northwest. So
Are we going to be in
hopefully
the
people
80s
are
over the
enjoying their
weekend?
summer.
Yeah.
It definitely looks like we're going to be up close to the 80s for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. So, and then getting warmer again next week.
So just heed that message. Just take care of your humans and animals that are around you, and make sure you don't forget anybody in the backseat of a car. That's just tragic. But in any event, we've got a great guest for you today. He's written the book High Wire, which is a #1 Amazon bestseller. He is a pilot who was with American Airlines for 35 years. You know what I thought, wow, 35 years is a long time. But that was only 1985. No, not even that. 1987, 1988. And so I was thinking to myself, I must be getting old if I can remember 1988 very well. And he was flying jets on behalf of American Airlines, and his name is Kam. So Kam, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. A lot of information there, and it's really sad to hear about the story that you had about the grandma and the grandkid in the back. Jeez.
I hesitate to report such things, but I think that if it can help somebody else not do that or not forget their child in the back seat, or their dog or their cat or an animal, and it's 80 degrees outside, and they are in the car for a long period of time. That's a recipe for disaster. So if we can help somebody not do that, I'll do that all day long.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Good for you.
And I appreciate you coming on the show, sir. First of all, I wanted to ask you, you were a pilot for American Airlines for 35 years. What was it like? What were the jets like in the 1980s versus what they are like today? I know you finished as a Boeing 777 captain with American, but how different is it from the 80s to now?
Very different. To begin with, aircraft had mostly three seats, three pilots, and one of them was a flight engineer with a whole panel. That whole seat and the panel is gone. Everything replaced by, automation and computers, which is one of the things that led me to write about this book. We are so automated. But beyond that, it's just changed tremendously. Every time there's an event that occurs, 9/11 changed aviation forever. COVID changed aviation forever. There's so many things that have happened, whether it was, an economic issue, or whether it was, some kind of a, medical thing here, like SARS we had. That was, a pretty big deal 20 or so years ago. So those have changed things quite a bit. But again, just the world has changed. We have twice the number of airplanes in the sky. We fly, twice as many planes, twice as close. We used to have separation of 2,000 feet between aircraft. Now it's only 1,000 feet. But it's, multiples of times safer today than it was back then. So lots and lots of changes, but almost all of them for the good. And it has made aviation so much better than it was, and so much safer than it was, and just great to be a witness to that.
I got to ask you, because I don't know whether it is that media is reporting it more, or are there more disputes on airplane and aircraft that cause, people that are losing their minds would be one way of putting it, I suppose, but
Yeah.
that are having difficulties with following the rules on the aircraft. Is that more prevalent now after COVID and during COVID than it was before, or is it just my imagination?
So it's a little bit of both. So it is, it is reported more because everybody has a cell phone, and you can grab it, and then in 15 minutes later, whether you're in the air or on the ground, this thing is online somewhere. But it is also a more difficult environment. During COVID, you would think that something as basic as wear a mask or put on a mask or leave the mask on, is something and a message that people get. But with the polarization of the nation, with all that was going on, I mean, it became a major issue, and it's still going on. And I don't know if you're noticing any of this. I have noticed some. Just seems like people are a little bit more short-tempered to me. It just seems like, things that we're seeing a lot more peace now. It's not nearly as much to me, but that is just a personal observation. But to answer your question, there is more of it, and it is being reported more frequently because anybody can report it. Anybody grabs something and put it on YouTube, and it becomes news. Whereas before, 30 years ago, I mean, there was no such thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people get out their cell phone and they start taking movies of acts like that and putting them on YouTube because they want them to go viral, and then hopefully they can monetize them and that kind of stuff. There's some of that going on too, I'm afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. And just aviation itself, you look at the way aviation was, in the 60s and the 50s, people dressed in completely dressed. It was as if you're going to a fancy party. It was a privilege to be able to fly. Now, it's cheaper than driving. It's faster, and just the number of airplanes. I mean, just the number of airplanes that we have in the sky, the number of people that travel. There's so much more, and you want to get from point A to point B with all of the restrictions that are out there, and all these millions of parts that have to work to get you there. And if you're late, or if something happens, I mean, people just get short-tempered and forget how complex this process is, and I think that obviously has a lot to do with it too.
Well, thankfully, the it seems like the systems are safer now because we don't hear about. I remember in the 70s and 80s that there were lots of crashes and planes going down and stuff, and you don't hear about it as much anymore. So, is that because planes are safer now?
Everything is safer. Planes are safer, even though they have fewer engines. Pilots are safer, even though there is one less pilot in the cockpit. The training is safer. The air traffic control is safer, and it's a lot of it is through automation and computerization, and and so the environment is just and the training is it's so thorough, that it's difficult. I mean, a pilot goes inside in training. First of all, you have to have all these prerequisites before you can even interview with an airline. An airline transport pilot license, which is the highest license you can get. After several other licenses, 1,500 hours of flight time, etc. But once you get all of that, you still go in there, and if they hire you, then you're going to go through 6 or 7 weeks of initial training, where you're in the ground in the simulators and in doing all the stuff that you have to do. So when you look at all of that, and the same thing applies to air traffic controllers, the systems that they have in place. I alluded to that a little bit earlier, where there was 2,000 feet of vertical separation between airplanes. If I'm going from here to New York, somebody's coming from New York to LA, they have to have 2,000 feet of separation between us. Now it's 1,000 feet. So there's a lot more airplanes in the sky, but again, through automation and through systems and development and training, all of this has become so much safer than it was. There were law firms that were in business primarily 30 years ago, law firms that just did airline crashes.
Sure.
They're all out of business. They all switched to something else because there was just no crashes, thankfully, that are occurring. So it's by far a far safer environment. But again, that creates a massive dependence on automation and on computers, which are again wonderfully safe, but computers only understand what they're programmed to do. The computer doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. It just knows what it's programmed to do. And in my world, my fictional world that I created, I decided, what if a computer gets the wrong information? What if it thinks it's doing the right thing while it is not doing the right thing? And it doesn't know the difference. And unfortunately, some of that did happen in the United, the 737, not the United, the Boeing 737 crashes that occurred, the Maxes, where
Yeah.
the MCAS system was telling the pilots, you're stalling, and push the nose down. Pilots are trying to pull it up, but the automation wins. And unfortunately, tragically, lives were lost.
Indeed, and that's really what your book High Wire is about automation on the airplanes and how a virus can infect the whole thing and make massive changes and stuff. And it's a award winning. It's an Edgar award nominated. You are an author for edge of your seat thrillers. Is that how you would describe High Wire?
Edge of Your Seat Thrill. That sounds good to me. Yes, but it was nominated by the Edgars, for the best novel. Um, and it's done tremendous. I'm very fortunate and very lucky to have had that honor. It's a pretty big honor, especially for at the time first time author. And so yes, the book is about automation and computer systems, and essentially, like I said, we are so automated. I picked one of the most automated systems in the aircraft, which is the flight controls. All the new airplanes that are coming out, Boeing or Airbus planes, they're all use the fly-by-wire system, which is complete automation. You still have a yoke, you still pull it, push it, turn it like you would anything else, but really all you're doing is typing on a keyboard. Even the machine that creates a feel for you, makes you feel as if you're turning something. Is that feel is artificial? It's created to make you feel like you're doing something, whereas all you're doing is typing on a computer. So in my world, I said, these computers are infallible. They don't malfunction, and they have backups to the backup. So it really is very, very safe. But what if a computer gets the wrong information? What if it's told that this is right when it's not right, and it doesn't know the difference? And that's what created the story. And I brought in a couple of engineers from Airbus and Boeing, part of my research. And we all understand and realize that this is fiction, and this is not nonfiction. It's not real life event. But they both said, if I were you, I would send copies of the book to Boeing and Airbus's security departments. Just let them know you're doing, which I did. Right away FedEx 2 copies there. Said, guys, I'm writing this just so you know.
Well, it's interesting because the environment around technology is growing so fast with IE or IA and the different aspects to it that, and it's easier. Well, let me ask you, in your book, you talk about a virus affecting the computer. Is that a real thing? Can that happen?
Well, again, it's a work of fiction. Can it happen? There are computers out there, and there are virus makers. You're affected by your computer and all the antivirus stuff that you have on yours every day. Can it potentially happen? Under some very difficult circumstances, yes. In my world, this was not a terrorist event. This was a domestic question of corporate greed came into the picture. Could somebody out there, come in and ISIS come in and plant a virus on an airplane? Absolutely not. But I created the environment where this was possible, and that kind of was the part of the fun.
Oh, exactly. And by the way, you grew up in Iran and or Iran, and you lived in India, Great Britain, the United States. You've lived all over the place. You went to high school in Arlington, Texas. Tell us a little bit about your backstory. How did you go from Iran to Texas?
The long way.
It's a
There
long way.
there were three brothers. Lived there, lived in Iran for the first 13 years of my life. And then that point in 1970, my father grabbed me and two of my brothers, one older, one younger, and just took us out there, took us to India. He was looking for a boarding school. It was a big family, and he just wanted to cut down the size. So, you know, and he did. And then we went out there, and he found a place. And we stayed there. We stayed in the country for about 4 years. That's where I learned English. That's and some Hindi at the time I was speaking, not anymore. And the goal was always to come to the United States, of course, but it was not easy to do. And so, a few years later, managed to go to England, United Kingdom. Got there in 1974. And lived there for about a year and kept applying for a visa, possibility to come to the U.S. And finally, in December of that year, we got a chance to come here. By then, I was 17 and a half years old. Last few months of high school left. Ended up finishing that in Arlington, Texas, Arlington High. And then somewhere along the line, aviation took over. I ended up working at TGI Fridays when there was only one Fridays on Greenville Avenue in Dallas as a waiter, and then eventually a bartender. A fellow bartender got his license, pilot's license, asked me if I wanted to go up in the air. I said, heck yeah, and went in there and fell in love with it. And I said, this is what I want to do, and used tip money to learn, and just kind of followed from there.
So when you were in Iran, now that goes back a ways. Was that when the Shah was in power?
It's right. We left there about 10 years before the Shah left, before the revolution. And yeah, from my perspective, it was just normal the way life was. Yeah, I didn't know any different. And yeah, it was. So it was. I was here actually in California, in Los Angeles, when all of that occurred. In I think it was 79 or 80, something like
Yeah,
that.
right in there. And yeah, so was now the Shah was I don't want to say puppet, but he was kind of installed or supported by the United States at the time. Is that right?
That's correct, and I think that's a big part of the animosity between the countries. From their point of view, anyhow. I'm not much of a historian, but what I do know is that after World War I think it was the British that installed the Shah's father in there in power, and then World War II came and went, and then they wanted a fresh new face, and they brought his son, and he was a very young man. And they put him in power, and I think it was the early '60s when there was a revolt, a public revolt, and the Shah left, and they had an election. They had a prime minister. And then through a military coup that was coordinated by, I believe it was the CIA and Richard Nixon, they went in and overthrew that government and brought the Shah back, and I think that led to all of the other things that we have seen.
And a lot of animosity between the two countries because they felt like we were messing around with their internal politics, and a lot of people didn't want to see the Shah come back, and stuff like that. So anyway, that was a long time ago. I was just kind of curious because I'm a bit of a history buff. Well, I like history. I can't call myself a history buff, but in any event, but you've been all over the place. Where is now you're in Southern California now. Is that your favorite place to be living?
It is. I have traveled to, I don't know, 100 countries, literally, thousands of cities. And there is no place like Southern California for me. I know there are people that love it or hate it, and there is a lot of reason for both. But I fall into the former category. I noticed you guys were talking about the weather before the program started. Gosh, I mean, beautiful weather. The mountains are right here. The ocean is right next to them. You want to go ski, you're 2 hours away. You want to go surf, you're 30 minutes away. So for me, that outstrips the traffic and other things that come up. So yes, this is absolutely home.
Well, if I can take that clip and publicize it, because we're real happy when Californians stay in California.
I have heard that. You're in Washington, right?
I am, yes, sir.
Yeah, apparently there's a lot of rowdy Californians that go there and they mess up real estate prices in all the states.
Yes, they do, sir. It used to be that you could buy, a house but it's, when you sell a house for what, I don't know, 1.5 or $2 million down there, and you can pick up a nicer house here for 750. Why not move up here? The weather's nice and stuff like that. But stay in California if I can give that.
Well, you don't have to worry about me. I love Washington. I love going through there. Gosh, of course, the Boeing plant is right there. So, there's you have a beautiful, beautiful place. But as far as long term, you don't have to worry about this, Southern California.
Well, good, and that's awesome. And by the way, now your last airplane that you flew as a job was a 777. Did you have to take classes and learn how to fly each type of aircraft when you went to a different one, or were you always? No, that wasn't around then. So, what did you fly first then?
So yes, it's an FAA regulation now that you can only fly one kind of airplane under normal circumstances. There may be some exceptions to that. So as American Airlines has many different types of airplanes, and each plane, some of the planes have several different variations. If you fly for Southwest, you don't ever have to worry about anything other than 737. That's what you're going to fly the day you get hired, and that's going to fly the day you retire. That's not the way it is at the larger airlines, the major airlines. Of course, Southwest is also a major, but the bigger the international airlines, I guess. And American is one of those. So the way the program is, you have an initial training session, is almost 2 months long, where they teach you all about the company, and they teach you about the planes and the flight and everything else that you need to know. And then after that, every time you want to change your planes, then you have at least about a 30-day school that you got to go to. 2 weeks of ground school, 2 weeks of simulator, and then you're ready to go. And that was the same for 777. And then you could be a first officer sitting in the right seat of a 777. That's a month school. And then you upgrade to a captain. That's a left seat. That's another month school. So even though you know the systems, you know the airline, you still got to go through the entire thing.
I'm just curious. Are there guys that make it to the first seat, or excuse me, the second seat, and but they don't quite have what it takes to get to the captaincy, and so they end up being a first officer for like ever? Or is it pretty easy to go from one to the other?
It's not easy, and are there almost never there are cases where you cannot upgrade. But I'm sure there are very, very rare cases where that happens, and if that happens, they'll find a way to accommodate that. Um, but there, a lot of people they just choose to stay in that right seat. Some people just choose to never upgrade because airline business is a game of seniority. It's all about seniority.
Yeah.
I can be a very senior co-pilot or I can be a very junior captain. As a senior co-pilot, I get to fly, when I want to fly, where I want to fly. Uh, I want Christmas off. I want to be home for dinner. I want to whatever I'm able to do. Whereas as a junior captain, all those options are taken away from you. They'll tell you where you'll fly out of or when or, how. So if you ever want to know who are the junior guys, they're the ones doing the all-nighters. They're the ones that are, working on Christmas and Thanksgiving, you know, uh, and that's what happens. So some people, it's purely a lifestyle choice, and some people choose to live, that way. And thank God for that because, there's just plenty of everything to go around for everybody. And if somebody likes the all-nighter, well, then that means somebody else who doesn't like it, they don't have to fly it. You know, works out
Exactly.
pretty good.
Now I heard that that there's a shortage of pilots. Is that a real thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Now they've talked about a shortage of pilots for 40 years, and it's never happened. But it's very much happening now, and the whole thing really stems from 1978. President Carter deregulated the airline industry. That means that for the first time, the airlines could, fly where they wanted to, charge what they wanted to. None of that was possible before that. So it was a great thing, the regulations, for a lot of airlines who expanded. And it was not a great thing for some other great airlines like Eastern and Pan Am and Braniff that went out of business. But for the airlines who expanded, they went into a massive expansion in the 1980s. From 1984 through 1990, they hired double, triple the size American Airlines, United, Delta, Southwest, etc. So they all hired at the same time. And with a mandatory pilot retirement age of 65, now they all have to retire at the same time.
Oh,
So,
yeah. That is a
so
problem.
yeah, so pilots are not hired, in a 90+% of pilots are hired between a very, thin, margin of ages, somewhere around 9 years old to maybe 35. That's where 95% of them are hired. And so when they're all hired, in 1984 to 1990, uh, they're all hitting 65 about the same time. And the law is, it's a federal law, and you can hire, you can fly on your 64th, and you can fly till the night before, the midnight before your birthday. And the minute that midnight is, no matter where you are, you could be on a trip, you could be overseas, you could be wherever. You're no longer qualified to fly over the United States. And
Oh, so so
you know,
so, so if you are like say you're in um Paris or London, and you're scheduled to fly, and it's your birthday, and your birthday hits, then they have to put you in a seat as a passenger and put another pilot in there.
yeah, absolutely. You are not allowed to touch the controls. You cannot fly. Now, they know that in advance, so they try not to schedule people that way.
Yeah.
But then that does happen. I had a guy that, wanted, happened. I was lucky enough to fly in his last flight with him. And we did a leg. We went to Honolulu, and, and he retired in Honolulu. So they had to find somebody there to come and bring the airplane back because the next day he couldn't fly. So it does happen. Not often, but it happens.
Well, very, very nice. By the way, we're talking with Kam Majd, and if you want to go to his website, which is kammaj.com, it is KAMMAJD.com. He's an author. Like we've been talking about flying for 35, 40 years. He's an award-winning author, and we're going to talk about his book when we come back and the process that he uses to write a book, and how did he go from being a high-flying pilot to being a author sitting on the ground writing a book. So, Cam, if you wait right there, we'll be right back in about 2 minutes. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio on KKNW. Hey, PTR loyal listener. First, thanks for being in my dream. And second, I have a new concept in business to share with you. It's called socialpreneurship. So, what's that? Well, it's the idea that any company designates all profits beyond expenses to be awarded to a local or international charity or project which is working to achieve good in the world. KM Media is such a company. We believe that it's important for us to give back whenever possible and to make great things happen. So I hope you'll join us in creating this new business model that will positively impact all of us. In the next few weeks, we will lay out the plan and begin our fundraising efforts. So stay tuned for more details right here on Positive Talk Radio.
When you want to say more than words communicate, you can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. anaturaldesign.com at your fingertips today.
Hey, thanks for listening to Positive Talk Radio. Did you know that we're also a media production company? Well, surprise, we are. We can create all kinds of audio, video products to fill any need. Please visit kmmedia.pro/our-store for a complete list of products and services. In addition, do you need a great voice to add to your own website or any other project? I know that we can add depth and quality to your work. I've been told more times than I can count by many professionals in the business that my voice adds to the quality of the presentation. So, let me create something for you. Please contact me at kevin@kmmedia.pro and let's create something great. And welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. It's a Wednesday afternoon. I hope everybody's enjoying sitting in traffic. Just kidding. It's one of those things. We're talking with Kam Majd, and he is the author of Highwire. And I'm always curious, Cam, because I talk to a lot of authors and singers and songwriters and screenwriters and folks, and every one of you guys seems to have a different process by which you do your work. What is your process like?
Oh gosh, I wish I had a process. That
might come in handy someday.
For a book, it's always the idea is first. What do you want to write about? They say write about what you know, and which is a wonderful idea, but it's you can't always write about what you know. I want to write about other things, and so getting the idea and then researching that idea is always a big part of what I need to do. Even though aviation and Highwire is generally about aviation, but there's a lot of technology and there are a lot of things that were beyond really my comprehension. So it took a lot of research to be able to get to that point. So having the idea is a big part. And then once you have the idea, for me anyhow, what voice do you want to use? Who do you want to be able to tell this story? Is it a man? Is it a woman? And that was one of the things that I had to struggle with a little bit, out there. And then beyond that is really, I generally just having an outline, in the several books that I've written, that's kind of the process that I've used, having an outline, that sort of gives you an idea, but you always want to let the characters take the book where it needs to go. So I'm not always, trying to put things in an outline, but knowing kind of the direction I want it to go, that has helped. And generally knowing how I want it to end, that has helped. And so those are things that I use, methods that I have used, and it works for me anyhow. It has worked. But gosh, there's a lot of really great authors out there that can tell people what they have used. The discipline is a big part of it. I know that. If you can manage to be able to write X number of hours every day, regardless of rain or shine, and then you're way ahead of the game. It's one of the areas where I'm lacking a little bit of discipline in, but other than that, that's the direction I would be going.
Nah, you worked hard for 35, 40 years, and now you get a chance to this is kind of like your passion that you are now doing I'm assuming you're retired from flying. And go ahead.
I am. I retired a year ago, and and like everybody says, you miss some of it. You don't miss the rest of it. I miss 15% of it. I miss the takeoffs and the landings and some of the layovers, some of the guys. But man, I don't miss 8 time zones or 12 time zones, or not being trying to sleep in a bunk bed, at 35,000 feet, or you eat when you're tired and you sleep when you're hungry. It's just, it's a little bit topsy-turvy, but yes, I am retired as of now.
I got to ask you, because I used to travel for a living. I was a chicken salesman. I'll bet you I'm the only one of those you ever met. And I would fly all the time. One of the places that I went to a lot was John Wayne. And the way John Wayne works is the runways are a little bit shorter, and it goes over residential districts very soon. So they want the jets to get up and away as quickly as they can. So I was just kind of curious as I was sitting there getting ready to take off at John Wayne, and they take off like a gun, and they really accelerate, and they go up high fast. Is that more fun to do that than it is to just take off? So,
I know. I know John Wayne Airport very well. I got about 8 of my licenses there.
Oh.
So runway 19 left, a little bitty runway. That's just for airplanes that are coming in, small planes. And then 19 right, that was the big planes. And I think it was only about 6,000 feet. On the other side of it is a freeway. So you're right. So you start off with absolute maximum power, and you treat the airplane, even though it's light, you treat it as if it's very heavy. In other words, use the maximum power available for that day. And you lift the nose up, you take it up quite a bit more than normal. And you get to, I think, what it was, 1,500 feet or something like that, which you can get to by the time you just get to the other side of the golf course. And then you lower the nose, and then the power comes way back. So that the noise is not affected. Now, LAX, you don't have that problem because you're taking off over the water.
Right.
But generally, real estate is not that expensive around airports for sound being one of the reasons. But the John Wayne Airport is a different beast. I mean, it's got some very expensive real estate on the other end of it. So they're very very protective, very aware of noise situations and so on. And is it more fun? It is different. John Wayne Airport requires, an American anyhow, requires some additional training just because of the length of the runway. 6,000 feet is just not that long. It's plenty long and safe. But, LAX, 10,000 feet, 11,000 feet, Chicago, New York, Kennedy, all of those places. It is different, and different is nice sometimes.
Did you fly into San Francisco very much?
I did, not often. I usually just did coast to coast or long hauls, but I've been there, 30 or 50 times.
I was on a plane one time, and it was a windy day. And of course, the airport is right there on the water. And it was a windy day, and there was a crosswind going. The pilot actually got applause as we landed safely. Did that ever happen for you, where the flight attendant came up and said, "Hey, they gave you a great big cheer because you landed without killing anybody"?
Yes. So if you fly long enough, all kinds of things will happen, and certainly an applause, obviously, connected to relief. Relief could be, if it's windy. Relief could be if there's an emergency. Relief could be cause of celebration. So I've had all of it. 44 years in cockpits, 35 with American. Something's going to happen. You're gonna see some of this happen, and I've had all of them. We've had emergencies where we landed, and it was such relief to everyone. And we've had, bouncing around days where, like you said, crosswinds or just lots of wind, and people were very happy to get down. And we've had more than one event where something wonderful just happened to occur, and then the whole world went to applause. And I can tell you that if you want to take another minute.
Sure.
Um, halfway to Hawaii, we get a call that you have passenger such and such in seat such and such. Said, yes, we do, apparently. We looked it up, and they said, well, you need to go back and you need to tell her that they found her son. And the story is that we were in Hawaii, and this seminary student who happened to be vacationing there got on a kayak and started to drift away from land. And he had just enough cell power to be able to make one phone call, to 911, and said that he's drifting away. So, and they lost touch with him. They send out search and rescue for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and on the fourth day, they chose to change that from search and rescue to search and retrieve, essentially assuming that he's gone. And I think it was the fourth day or the fifth day, and we were taking the family out there with us to essentially, do their goodbyes, the memorial or some version of that. And they said, you got to tell them they found her son, and he was alive. And turned out on the fourth day or fifth day or whatever it was, a C-130 out there saw something. They came down, they circled, they found him, they threw in some rafts, and send out help, and brought him in. He was exhausted. He was, no food or drinks for a number of days in that sun in a little kayak. And so we brought the flight attendants in to tell them that. One flight attendant, of course, another one came in, and they were fighting each other on who gets to go tell her. you know, you know, elbowing each other, getting out of the cockpit. And 5 minutes later go by, not even 2 minutes later go by, and we can just hear an explosion of cheers, and just, of course it was, champagne for everybody. And if that's out, then whatever cocktail we have for everybody, it's free. And it truly was a moment of celebration. That's one of the things that sticks out, because it was so good. You don't always often get to deliver things that are that good. And that night, we were in the hotel, and looking at the news, and sure as heck, there was the guy. He's all gaunt, and and everything that's associated with being in the sun for 4 or 5 days alone. And boy, he was happy. We were happy. Good day.
Yes, and yes, indeed. That's a wonderful human interest story. You should write a book about your experiences, since you did it for 40 years. Your experiences on the plane, because those riptides in Florida, or in Hawaii, I've experienced those. And if you get into one, sometimes, especially in a kayak or something, it's impossible to get out, and you end up in the middle of the
Yeah.
ocean.
He was very, very lucky, because many people that were in his place, that just didn't happen to him. So, how much did the power of prayer and God come into it? Leave that up to your own beliefs. But he was a seminary student. He was out there, and yeah, it was amazing. It was wonderful to be able to see that, and to just be a part of it, participate.
Yes, yes, indeed. There's a joke in there someplace about the seminary student who gets stuck out in the ocean. And anyway, never mind. But I wanted to get back to your writing and the process that you use, because I was talking with somebody the other day, and they actually, when they're building their um, outline, they're actually building three-dimensional characters that have a past, have got a future, have got. Do you use that in any of your work at all? Is that a thing, really?
It is a thing for a lot of people, and it takes, and you absolutely should know the character inside and out, but it's so damn much work,
Yeah.
to get to know every character, and to get to create a character that's completely three-dimensional and you fully understand them. So, do I do it? I cheat a lot, you know. It's just as hard, to sit there and really understand every character and, their motivation and past and future, as you pointed out. And, so I use a lot of myself. I use a lot of, the people that I have known and I have met, and that has helped me out a lot. But the right way is absolutely get to know the character, to create characters that are colorful, three-dimensional, and let them tell you the story. Let them take it, where it needs to take it. So there's a proper way to do it, and then there is a my way to do it, and I kind of go with the other one.
Well, you followed the rules for 44 years, so you're entitled to take a few shortcuts now again. Because I know in your previous, I drove a bus for 12 years, and there's no room for doing it your own way. You can get into a lot of trouble doing that. So that's great. By the way, and now you've also got, as I understand it, a second book that is in process. Where are we with that book?
Yeah, there's multiples of book. Silent Voices is the one that's the other one that's coming out right now, and it's a book about it's nothing to do with aviation. It will be out in the next 60 to 90 days. It's about two sisters. One is born and raised in America, and the other one is born and raised in Afghanistan through an accident that occurred when she was born. And the book takes place about 30 days before the American pullout in July of 21. The younger one, who's born and raised in Afghanistan, has no clue why she has blonde hair and blue eyes and fair skin. It's a curse that has been, that has followed her all her life because, everyone was attracted to her, all the wrong sort of people. And these two sisters learn about each other 1 month before this happens. And so the book takes place over there, and the older one has to go there and try and find her in the all the mayhem and the insanity that that was happening at that time. It is a fast-paced thriller. It is very much fact-oriented, but events that occurred on the ground during that period of time. And it brings in the poppy fields and the opium and the warlords, and the sheer terror of the American pullout, of the entire NATO pullout, and such a fast-paced event the way it occurred. So it's a fun story.
That sounds like a movie to me.
That's what they're saying about Highwire, which incidentally is being shopped around as we speak. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, hopefully this will be your first and then your second movie, and stuff. So now, are you, if you were to sell Highwire to become a movie, would you do the screenplay, or would they hire somebody to do that, you think?
It depends. I've done some screenplays, but just depends on the deal. The Falling, is a T.J. Newman, is an author, flight attendant that did it. And there was a lot of demand, and I think she is writing the screenplay as well. So it's just in the negotiations and what happens. I take one thing at a time. First things first. Let's see if we can get it to that point, and then we'll see what happens.
Well, you're in a great place to get that to happen in California, eh? So, that's because Hollywood is right there. I don't know if you know that, but there's a place called Hollywood. It's right there, and that's where all the films get made, or a lot of them.
It's another reason why you won't see me moving to Washington. There's so
well,
lot going on here.
Vancouver, BC is a budding movie community as well. So
is another beautiful place. You guys live in a gorgeous place. That whole corner of the planet is so beautiful. Among all the places that I've gone to, it's really truly is one of the most beautiful out there.
Could you do me a favor and keep that under your hat?
Don't tell anyone. Cut this portion out.
Don't tell anybody that this is God's country, because in my world, I've lived here 65 years, and I wouldn't live anywhere else. Now, I'll take that back. I would live in Southern California if I could have a job that was within shouting distance of where I lived and stuff, and could afford the cost of living. But it's beautiful down there. And but the West Coast, in the middle of the country, they call us the east or the left coast. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yes, the left coast of America.
Yes, yeah. You living over there in the left coast where all them liberal people are. Is that right? Yeah. I work for a company out of Arkansas, and they gave that to me all the time. You live in Seattle, isn't it just a bunch of liberal snotheads that live there? So I'm not allowed to say. I'm sure I'm allowed to say snotheads on the radio, but that's all right. In any event, we're talking with Kam Majd, and he's the author of High Wire, and it's a thriller, and it's an award winner. And he's got another book that's going to be coming out. And is that going to be in wide release in the next couple 3 weeks or a month?
Yeah, a few months actually. Yes, it is, and we'll see how it does. I'm looking forward to it. It's been in the works for some time, and it's a pretty good story. And again, most of it just based on reality, but of course, fiction about the sisters.
Now, how long has High Wire been out now?
Well, the original version of Highwire came out about 20 years ago, a little more, 22 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And the book itself was bought by Bantam Dell, now a portion of Random House. And, the galleys, the portion of the book where they sell, to the bookstores, the galleys were scheduled to be sold, to be going into bookstores on the week of 9/11. So the book itself is an aviation thriller. It takes place in New York. On the cover, we have a 767 in a bank angle with the words "faster than the speed of terror." And this book was being sold, while those buildings were on fire, to bookstores. And of course, needless to say that caused it to take a hit. First printing in the U.S. alone was going to be 244,000 copies, which was back then was a pretty big number, for a first-time author. And of course, that did not happen, but it still went to a second printing, and like I said, the nominations and the awards and so on. So it's been a lot of fun to do that. That's the original version, but now I've taken it out. I've completely updated it with today's standards. Most of it still applies exactly as it was, the fly-by-wire system, the technology, the computers, but it's up to date with, today's information. So pretty interesting still, I think.
Yeah, awesome. Because I just can't imagine a book like High Wire on 9/11. People would say, I don't think I want to read that today. But I'm glad it's doing well, and you've redone it, and you've got the new one coming out, and it's great that you're here, and I really appreciate you coming to talk to me. I would ask you at this point, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to tell our audience right now?
No, if you want to write, if it's your dream to write, do it. Because if I can do it, literally anybody can do it, And then
Wouldn't sell yourself short like that. I've tried. God knows I've tried, and it doesn't work for me.
Well, come visit me on kammajd.com. Drop me a note. A lot of people are doing that. And, and then it's kammajd.com for the website, and then Kam Majd books for all the other, Instagram, etc., all the other social media stuff. Come visit, say hello.
Well, you could become maybe a coach and be a writing coach and teach people how to write.
Right after I finish teaching how to fly.
Now, do you ever fly anymore? Do you have a private plane, or do you have access to one that you get up and about ever?
I don't trust anything with less than 16 wheels. So, so no, I did that. I did all of that for, tens of thousands of hours. And so, no, where do you go from a 777 captain, a little airplane, and go and try and look over your shoulder, see if anybody's coming over? I think that ship sailed.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Well, thank you so much for coming here. Go to his website again, which is kammajd.com, and get all the information and stuff like that. It'd be great fun. It's been fun having you here. I've enjoyed talking with you. Thank you for doing it.
Same here. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for having me, and big hello to your audience, and thanks again.
Yes. Hello, audience. See, I just did that for you, just for you. I want to I want to remind everybody that on Friday we've got a really good show. Sisters J is coming. They are two award-winning early 20-something singers and they're sisters, and they are just remarkable human beings. And they've got a whole entourage of people, including a producer who worked with Whitney Houston and James Taylor and a bunch of folks producing their works over time. So his name is Ted Perlman, and he'll be on the show on Friday, and that's at noon. And then we have 3:00 as well on Kixie. So don't forget that. Again, thank you everybody for listening to Positive Talk Radio. On behalf of Cam, I wish everybody to take care of each other, and because each other's all we've got. We'll see you Friday at noon.